You've likely spent years believing that once you close your eyes and pull up the covers, your heart finally gets to rest after a long day. It's a comforting thought we all share, but for those of us over 60, the reality is far more complex. Think of your heart like a loyal but aging engine. When you lie down in the wrong position or at the wrong temperature, it is like asking that engine to idle at redline for 8 hours straight while you completely unaware. In my years of clinical practice, I've seen too many patients who did everything right during the day, only to face a life-altering crisis before dawn because of silent stressors lurking in their bedroom. These errors aren't just minor inconveniences. They are physical pressures that can quietly strip away your independence, leaving you reliant on others for your daily needs. However, you still hold the steering wheel. There is a specific, science-backed protocol to shield your heart starting tonight. Tell me, are you sleeping well or feeling tired? To truly understand how to protect your heart, we first have to pull back the curtain on what is happening inside your chest while you are drifting off to sleep. I often tell my patients that sleep is not a passive state. It is a highly active physiological negotiation. For most of your life, your body has been an expert negotiator. But as we cross the threshold of 60, the rules of that negotiation change fundamentally. When you are 30 years old, your cardiovascular system is remarkably forgiving. You can sleep in a cramped airplane seat, pull an all-nighter, or sleep in a cold room, and your heart simply compensates. It has what we call cardiac reserve. However, once we enter our 60s and 70s, that reserve begins to thin. This isn't just about getting older. It is a specific biological shift in how your heart and vessels respond to the environment of the night. In a healthy individual, sleep is characterized by a dipping phenomenon. Your blood pressure naturally drops by about 10 to 20%. Your heart rate slows down, and your metabolic demands decrease. This is the heart's chance to recover from the stress of the day. For a senior, this dip is vital. However, the aging heart is often characterized by what I call the inflexibility factor. Over decades, the arteries, including the great aorta, tend to stiffen. This is a process called arteriosclerosis. The heart muscle itself may become slightly thicker and less compliant. When your vessels are stiff, they lose their ability to act as shock absorbers. Imagine a garden hose that has been sitting in the sun for years. It becomes brittle. If you suddenly turn the water on high, the hose doesn't expand to accommodate the pressure. It stays rigid, and the pressure inside spikes dangerously. This is exactly what happens in an aging cardiovascular system during the night. Any sudden stress, a bad dream, a sudden need to use the bathroom, or a struggle to breathe due to a poor sleeping position, causes a spike in blood pressure that a stiffened heart cannot easily absorb. To prove just how critical this period is, we look at a landmark study published in Circulation, the premier journal of the American Heart Association. Researchers embarked on a monumental task, following 15,000 seniors over the course of 12 years. They weren't just looking at who had heart disease. They were looking at when and how these events occurred. What they discovered was chilling. Certain invisible errors in sleep hygiene and positioning increased the risk of sudden cardiac death during the night by a staggering 78%. Think about that for a moment. We spend so much time worrying about our cholesterol at lunch or our steps during the afternoon. But it is this 78% increased risk during the 8 hours we aren't even conscious that often decides our long-term independence. When your heart is forced to work against these errors, it begins to accumulate micro-damage. Over time, this leads to the very things that rob us of our quality of life: congestive heart failure, chronic arrhythmias, and the silent strokes that we only discover when it's too late to reverse the damage. One of the most common things I hear in my office is, "Dr. Whitman, I've slept flat on my back my whole life. Why should I change now?" My answer is always about fluid dynamics. Throughout the day, as you walk, sit, and move, gravity pulls fluid down toward your lower extremities. This is why many of you notice your socks leave a ring around your ankles by 5 p.m. The moment you lie down completely flat, what we call the supine position, that gravity-driven pressure is neutralized. All that fluid that was pooled in your legs and abdomen begins to rush back toward your heart. In medical terms, we call this an increase in preload. For a young person, the heart simply stretches and pumps that extra volume out without a second thought. But for a heart that is 60 or 70 years old, this sudden tidal wave of blood can be overwhelming. The chambers of the heart stretch too far, and the heart has to work significantly harder to move that volume. It is like trying to run a marathon while someone is constantly handing you heavier and heavier weights. But the danger of sleeping flat doesn't stop with volume overload. It also creates a gravity trap for your airway and your digestive system. When you are flat on your back, your tongue and the soft tissues of your throat are pulled downward by gravity, narrowing your airway. This triggers or worsens sleep apnea. Every time you stop breathing for a few seconds, your brain panics and sends a jolt of adrenaline to your heart to wake you up. This adrenaline spike is a poison to an aging heart. It causes your blood pressure to skyrocket in the middle of the night, often leading to what we call non-dipping, where your blood pressure stays high all night instead of resting. Furthermore, lying flat allows stomach acid to creep up into the esophagus. You might not even feel the heartburn, but your body feels it. The esophagus sits just inches away from the back of your heart. Irritation in the esophagus can actually trigger the vagus nerve, which in turn can disrupt your heart's electrical rhythm. The data from the Mayo Clinic is undeniable. They found that seniors who slept completely flat were 2.3 times more likely to suffer from nocturnal atrial fibrillation, or AFib. AFib is that chaotic, irregular heartbeat that feels like a fish flopping in your chest. It is one of the leading causes of blood clots and strokes in the United States. The fix is incredibly simple yet life-saving, the 6 to 8 inch elevation. I don't want you to just stack more pillows under your head. That actually creates a dangerous bend in your neck. Instead, you need to elevate the entire upper half of your body. You can do this with a dedicated wedge pillow or by using risers under the head end of your bed frame. By creating a gentle 15 to 20 centimeter incline, you use gravity as an ally. The fluid stays lower in the body, your airway stays open, and your heart is allowed to beat in a relaxed, low-pressure environment. It is the single most effective small change you can make starting tonight. If sleeping flat is a trap, then how you use your pillows is often the hidden bait. I see two extremes in my practice: the people who use no pillows at all, and the stackers who pile up 4 or 5 pillows until they are propped up like they're rewatching a movie. Both of these are dangerous for the aging cardiovascular system. Let's talk about the stackers first. When you stack multiple pillows, you are usually bending your neck at a sharp, unnatural angle. This creates a kink in the garden hose of your circulation, specifically the carotid arteries and the vertebral arteries that supply blood to your brain. For a senior who may already have some plaque buildup in these vessels, this kink can significantly reduce the amount of oxygen reaching the brain during the night. This is often why people wake up feeling foggy, confused, or with a dull headache. If the brain isn't getting enough oxygen, it sends a distress signal to the heart. Pump harder, we need more air. Your heart, which is supposed to be resting, now has to increase its force and rate to overcome the blockage in your neck. On the other side, we have those who sleep with no pillow or a very thin one. This causes the head to be level with, or even slightly below the heart. This increases the intracranial pressure, the pressure inside your skull. In people with high blood pressure, this is a major risk factor for a hemorrhagic stroke, a bleed in the brain. It also puts immense pressure on the delicate vessels in your eyes and ears. Researchers at Johns Hopkins University have identified what they call the sweet spot for pillow height. For the average senior, your head should be elevated approximately 10 to 15 centimeters, about 4 to 6 inches, higher than the rest of your body. But, and this is the crucial part, your neck must remain in a neutral straight line with your spine. I remember a patient of mine, Arthur, a 71-year-old retired engineer. Arthur came to me complaining of what he called thumping in his chest every night at 2 a.m. He was terrified that he was having a heart attack. After we ran some tests, We realized Arthur was a stacker. He was using 3 thick pillows that forced his chin toward his chest. This position was partially obstructing his airway and kinking his carotid arteries. His heart was thumping because it was desperately trying to push blood past that kink. We switched Arthur to a single high-quality memory foam pillow that supported the natural curve of his neck and raised his elevation to a wedge under the mattress. Within 2 weeks, his nocturnal palpitations dropped by 67%. He told me, "Eric, I thought I needed a pacemaker. It turns out I just needed to stop fighting my own pillows." Arthur S.'s story is a reminder that the architecture of your sleep environment is just as important as the medications you take. In many American households, the thermostat is a point of contention. But for my patients over 60, I tell them that the temperature of their bedroom is a medical prescription, not just a matter of comfort. Your heart is the primary engine of your body's HVAC system. It is responsible for moving heat around or helping you dissipate it. Let's look at the danger of a room that is too hot, anything over 75 degrees or 24 degrees. When your environment is hot, your body has to work overtime to cool you down. It does this through a process called vasodilation. It opens up the blood vessels near the skin. To fill those open vessels, your heart has to pump faster and harder. You also begin to sweat. Even a small amount of night sweating leads to dehydration. As you lose water, your blood becomes more viscous. It gets thick like molasses. Thick blood is much more likely to form a clot, which can lead to a heart attack or stroke. A major study from Harvard University found that seniors sleeping in rooms above 75 degrees had a 1.8 times higher likelihood of experiencing a cardiac event during the night compared to those in cooler rooms. However, the thermostat war goes both ways. A room that is too cold, under 60 degrees or 16 degrees, is equally dangerous. In a cold room, your body tries to conserve heat by constricting your blood vessels. This vasoconstriction immediately spikes your peripheral blood pressure. Your heart now has to push blood through pipes that have suddenly become much narrower. For a heart that is already stiff or aging, this added resistance can lead to a sudden failure or a dangerous spike in pressure that ruptures a vulnerable plaque in your arteries. Researchers in Finland, a country that knows a lot about the cold, found that sudden cardiac deaths during sleep increased by 33% during nights with extreme cold. The heart simply couldn't handle the squeeze of the cold environment. So, what is the safety zone? The American Heart Association and the National Sleep Foundation both point to a very specific range: 64 to 70 degrees Fahrenheit, 18 to 21 degrees Celsius. This is the temperature range where the human heart can most easily maintain a stable core temperature without having to speed up or constrict the vessels. If you feel chilly at 66 degrees, don't turn up the heat. Instead, use layers of breathable blankets. This allows you to keep the air you breathe cool, which is better for your heart, while keeping your body's temperature stable. The final error in this section is one that many people overlook because it feels so normal. It's what you wear to bed. I cannot tell you how many patients I see who wear pajamas with tight elastic waistbands, snug collars, or even tight socks to bed. To an aging heart, snug is a problem. Any garment that creates a visible ring on your skin is acting as a tourniquet for your microcirculation. A tight waistband, in particular, increases intra-abdominal pressure. This pressure pushes your internal organs up against your diaphragm, making it harder for you to take deep, oxygenating breaths. It also pushes stomach acid upward, increasing the risk of the nocturnal reflux we discussed earlier, which can trigger arrhythmias. Furthermore, we need to talk about material science. Many modern pajamas are made of synthetic fibers like polyester or nylon. These materials are essentially plastic. They do not breathe. They trap a layer of hot, humid air against your skin, creating a microsauna effect. This spikes your heart rate and causes the same dehydration and blood-thickening issues we saw with a room that is too hot. I'd like to share the story of Margaret, a 68-year-old woman who had been struggling with morning hypertension. She would take her blood pressure the moment she woke up, and it was always 145/95 or higher, even though her daytime numbers were controlled with medication. Margaret was a cold sleeper. She wore heavy synthetic fleece pajamas and tight wool socks because her feet were always cold. When we looked at her habits, I realized her body was under thermal and compressive stress all night. Her heart was working overtime to pump blood past her tight socks and through the heat trapped by her fleece. I asked her to make a simple switch: 100% loose-fitting cotton pajamas and loose-top cotton socks that didn't leave a mark. Within a week, Margaret's morning blood pressure readings stabilized to 128/82. She wasn't sicker, she was just being strangled by her sleepwear. By choosing natural fibers like cotton, linen, or bamboo, you allow your skin to respire. This helps your heart stay in a calm, parasympathetic state, the rest and digest mode where real healing happens. As we move forward, remember, your bedroom should be a sanctuary for your heart, not a series of obstacles it has to overcome. These 4 areas, physiology, positioning, pillows, and temperature, are the foundation of your independence. When you get these right, you aren't just sleeping, you are actively protecting the engine that keeps you alive. In the next section, we will dive even deeper into the nighttime intake and the specific emergency protocols every American senior must have on their nightstand. As we move into the second half of our protocol, we have to talk about the things you do before you even get into bed. In my years in the cardiology ward, I've realized that a heart attack at 3 a.m. is rarely a random event. It is often the final result of a series of decisions made between 6 p.m. and 10 p.m. We are going to look at what you put into your body, how you position that body, and, most importantly, how to recognize the silent alarms your heart is screaming before it's too late. I often tell my patients that after 6 p.m., their bodies enter a resource war. Your heart has a limited amount of blood and energy to distribute. When you make poor intake choices late at night, you force your heart to choose between keeping you alive and processing what you just consumed. Error 5A. Heavy late meals. In the United States, we have a culture of the big dinner. We eat light during the day and have a heavy, protein-rich meal late in the evening. This is a disaster for a senior's heart. When you eat a heavy meal, think of a steak, mashed potatoes, or anything fried, your body initiates what we call splanchnic blood flow. This means a massive amount of blood is diverted away from your brain and your heart and sent toward your digestive tract. For a 70-year-old heart that might already have some narrowed arteries, this blood theft is a crisis. Your heart now has to pump faster and harder to maintain blood pressure for your vital organs, while the gut is stealing the supply. A major study published in the European Heart Journal followed thousands of adults and found that those who ate a heavy meal within 3 hours of bedtime had a 3.2 times higher risk of suffering a heart attack during the night. The pressure of a full stomach also pushes against the diaphragm and can trigger the vagus nerve, leading to heart palpitations and dangerous arrhythmias. Error 5B. Alcohol. Many of my patients tell me, "Dr. Whitman, a glass of wine helps me fall asleep." While alcohol might help you fall asleep faster, it destroys the quality of your sleep and stresses your heart. Alcohol is a potent vasodilator, but as it wears off in the middle of the night, your body goes through a mini withdrawal. This causes a spike in stress hormones like adrenaline and cortisol. This leads to what we call holiday heart syndrome, even in people who don't drink much, which is a sudden onset of atrial fibrillation, a fib. Furthermore, alcohol is a diuretic. It dehydrates you, making your blood thicker and more prone to clotting. For a senior, even one drink within 4 hours of bedtime can increase nocturnal arrhythmias by 58%. Error 5C. Late caffeine. We all know caffeine keeps us awake, but few realize its half-life. Caffeine takes about 5 to 6 hours for just half of it to leave your system. If you have a cup of coffee with your 6 p.m. dessert, half of that caffeine is still screaming at your heart at midnight. It prevents your blood pressure from dipping naturally, keeping your heart in a state of high alert while you are trying to rest. Error 5D. Fluid overload. I am a big advocate for hydration, but Front-loading is the key. When you drink large amounts of water right before bed, you guarantee multiple trips to the bathroom. The act of waking up abruptly, sitting up and walking to the bathroom causes a sharp spike in heart rate and blood pressure. For a vulnerable heart, these repeated shocks in the middle of the night are dangerous. The solution: the smart snack and timing. Your last heavy meal should be at least 4 hours before bed. If you are truly hungry, reach for a smart snack. Half a banana is perfect because it contains potassium and magnesium, which actually helps stabilize the heart's electrical system. A few almonds provide healthy fats that keep you full without the blood theft of a heavy meal. The story of Robert, 73. Robert was a retired high school principal who suffered from ventricular tachycardia, a dangerously fast heart rhythm. Every night at 11 p.m., his heart would start racing. We discovered Robert was eating a large bowl of pasta and having a decaf coffee, which still has some caffeine, at 8:30 p.m. We moved his dinner to 6 p.m., switched him to a light fish and vegetable dish, and replaced his late-night coffee with a warm chamomile tea. Within 3 weeks, his nocturnal tachycardia episodes vanished. He told me, "I thought my heart was failing, but it was just overworked and underfed the right things." Once you are in bed, the geometry of your body determines how hard your heart has to work. Position number 1, prone, face down. I'll be blunt. If you are over 60, you must stop sleeping on your stomach. This is the most taxing position for your cardiovascular system. When you are face down, you are compressing your chest and rib cage, making it significantly harder for your lungs to expand. This reduces the oxygen levels in your blood. Furthermore, you have to turn your neck to the side to breathe, which can compress the vertebral arteries. A Japanese study found that seniors who slept prone had a 4.1 times higher risk of sudden cardiac death during sleep. Position number 2, the right side. While better than sleeping on your stomach, sleeping on your right side can be problematic for those with even mild heart failure. Your heart is located slightly to the left. When you lie on your right side, the heart is essentially hanging and can slightly compress the inferior vena cava, the large vein that returns blood to the heart. This makes the heart pump uphill against gravity. The gold standard: the left side. Anatomy favors the left side. When you lie on your left side, your heart stays in a stable position. Gravity actually helps the heart pump blood out through the aorta, which arches to the left. It also facilitates better lymphatic drainage and keeps your stomach below your esophagus, preventing the reflux that triggers arrhythmias. A study from Stony Brook University followed 2,000 heart patients and found that those who predominantly slept on their left side had 37% fewer nocturnal cardiac events. The story of Helen, 69. Helen had been a stomach sleeper her entire life. She was diagnosed with mild congestive heart failure and constantly woke up gasping for air. She told me it felt impossible to change. We used a bumper technique, a long body pillow placed behind her back and one between her knees to keep her from rolling onto her stomach. It took about 10 days to adjust, but once she did, her nocturnal oxygen saturation went from a risky 91% to a healthy 95%. Her heart didn't have to fight for air anymore. The greatest tragedy I see is the patient who waits until morning to see if the pain goes away. In cardiology, we say, time is muscle. Chest pressure. Not always a sharp pain. It can feel like an elephant sitting on your chest or a tightness that wasn't there when you went to bed. Shortness of breath. If you wake up and have to sit up to catch your breath, your heart is likely struggling to pump fluid. Palpitations, a feeling that your heart is skipping beats, fluttering, or racing like a motor. Cold sweats. If you wake up clammy and drenched in sweat, but the room is cool, that is a massive red flag. Morning dizziness, feeling like you're going to pass out the moment you sit up. Snoring, apnea. If a spouse tells you that you stop breathing, your heart is being starved of oxygen every single night. Swollen ankles. If your feet are swollen in the morning, not just the evening, it means your heart failed to clear the fluid during the night. the Emergency Readiness Kit. Every senior in America needs this on their nightstand. 325 mg chewable aspirin. Why chewable? Because it enters the bloodstream through the lining of the mouth and stomach much faster than a pill you swallow. It can stop a clot from completely closing an artery. A charged phone, within arm's reach. A medical list, your current medications, allergies, and your cardiologist's name. When paramedics arrive at 3 hours a.m., they need this information instantly. The action protocol. If you wake up with symptoms, sit up slowly. Do not stand up and walk around, as that puts an immediate load on the heart. Chew your aspirin. Call 911 immediately. Do not call your son or daughter first. Call 911. The story of Harold, 75. Harold woke up at 2 a.m. with a dull ache in his jaw and a cold sweat. Instead of taking an antacid and going back to sleep, he followed the protocol. He sat on the edge of his bed, chewed his aspirin, and hit speed dial for emergency services. Because he was prepared, he was in the catheterization lab within 60 minutes. His blockage was cleared before his heart muscle suffered permanent damage. Harold is still golfing today because he didn't wait until morning. Let's bring this all together into a daily routine that protects your independence. 1. Bedroom configuration. This is your physical fortress. Ensure your head of bed is elevated 6 to 8 inches. Set your thermostat between 64 and 70 degrees. Ensure the room is blackout dark. Light pollution can actually spike your heart rate. 2. The 4-hour countdown. 4 hours before bed, your last meal. Keep it light, like grilled chicken or fish. 0 alcohol from this point forward. 2 hours before bed, your last full glass of water. From here on, only small sips if needed. Take a 10-minute very slow walk around the house to help digestion. 1 hour before bed, turn off the TV and the smartphone. The blue light and the stressful news cycles spike your cortisol. Switch to a physical book or soft music. Put on your loose 100% cotton pajamas. 3. Bedtime ritual. Once in bed, perform 5 minutes of rhythmic breathing. Inhale for 4 seconds, hold for 4, exhale for 6. This stimulates the vagus nerve to tell your heart, it's safe to rest now. Position yourself on your left side with a pillow between your knees to align your hips. 4. The 6 a.m. wake-up protocol. This is crucial. Most heart attacks occur in the morning because of the cortisol surge. Step 1. Open your eyes and lie still for 1 minute. Step 2. Flex your ankles and wrists to get blood moving. Step 3. Sit up slowly and stay on the edge of the bed for a full 60 seconds. Step 4. Stand up slowly. This gradual transition prevents the sudden spike in blood pressure that causes so many morning tragedies. Your heart has been your most faithful companion for 60, 70, or 80 years. It has beaten through every joy and every sorrow you've ever known. It doesn't ask for much, just a few small changes in how you treat it during those 8 hours of darkness. By following this protocol, you aren't just sleeping. You are defending your life, your mobility, and your freedom. You have the power to wake up every single morning feeling strong and ready for the day. Let's start that protection tonight. The single biggest danger to your heart isn't always a sudden event. It is the silent, invisible strain your cardiovascular system endures every night while you think it's resting. If you've spent years sleeping flat or ignoring that slight midnight huffing, it's not because you were careless. It is simply that the system rarely takes the time to explain the physics of your aging heart to you. You've been doing your best with the information you had. But tonight, that changes. You now have the protocol to reclaim your independence and protect your quality of life. By making these small adjustments, you are already miles ahead of where you were yesterday. If this protocol gave you a new perspective, please comment "ready" or "checking habits" below to let me know you're taking that first step. Consider following this channel not for entertainment, but as a quiet safeguard so you never miss these early warnings. There is another daytime habit, even more common than these sleeping errors, that is quietly aging your heart before you even reach the bedroom. I share these things because I've stood at too many bedsides listening to patients who only wish they had known this sooner. Sleep well, protect your heart, and wake up safe tomorrow.